Ah, folks are starting to join in. Welcome. All right, cool. Well, as people are joining in, let me go ahead and get things started here with the typical introduction. So welcome everyone to our daily lunch and learn. If this is your first time attending or you're watching this video, this is a time every week where you will get an hour with a decisions expert from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And so really, we just bring in a number of different decisions experts and folks who understand different parts of the decisions business or different areas of decisions, and you get to ask any questions you would like whatsoever. And so it's just kind of an open forum Q&A. You can ask problems you're stuck with. You can ask about how to do things. If you have a certain expert on the call, like myself, who's really good with the roadmap, we can talk a lot about the roadmap and have questions there. But really, this is just a time to sit with us and to go through anything you're stuck on, have questions about, want to look at together or talk through. So yesterday we had Tim Stahl, who is our solutions engineering lead. He does all the architecture for projects and big things like that. Today you get me. I am Eric Walmerink. I'm currently the product manager at Decisions, but I've been here about 10 years. I'm going to say it's like 9.5, but it's really close to 10. So I'm going to stick to 10. Nearly a decade there. That sounds better. But what I currently do is I manage our roadmap and make sure that we're kind of building all of the new features and integrations and things to stay the most capable and accessible automation tool, as well as provide the most value to all of our customers. So I submit, or I ask people for a lot of feedback, do a lot of R&D design, work through some issues or challenges you may be having, and how as a product we can improve those. But I've been here a long time. I used to be on professional services. I used to do all of our training. I used to do our security compliance. So please ask any questions. And if I can't answer it, I'll be sure to follow up after the call. Tomorrow, you'll get Jared Rodriguez, who's currently our head of our training team. A great time to join if you have any questions on how to do stuff. He can walk you step by step on how to build and work on a couple of things. And then on Thursday, you'll get Mark Klein, who's part of our pre-sales engineering team. Mark is specifically an expert at process mining. So if you have any questions or want to see process mining initiatives, how it works, how you can enable it, what the actual tool looks like, how to use it, I would absolutely join Thursday and ask him any questions you may have. Now, just a couple of reminders in case you haven't seen these slides before. We have concluded our end of life support for all versions up to and including version 6, which means that support we only have is for version 7 and version 8. Version 8 being the current latest install of Decisions. If you're not on version 7 or 8, please contact your customer success manager or support, and we'd be more than happy to make sure we get you upgraded as well. But for version 7, our long-term support version, we will still be providing security patches and updates there, but no feature releases. And version 8 is where all the new features and R&D stuff will be going. And then if we look forward, version 9, we're targeting early next year, Q1 of 2024, and then we'll be moving the slide around just a little bit. Last couple things is I personally, Eric, give a product roadmap, the full detailed product roadmap. It's about 45 minutes to an hour every other Thursday from 11 to noon Eastern. So it's right before this call. If you're interested in kind of sitting and listening to a little bit of our strategy, why we do what we do, and looking at the detailed roadmap, please feel free to join that. And so the next one we'll have is next week, next Thursday, August 24th. And last slide I have here is, I don't have another slide here. I thought we had some webinars coming up I could show about, but I guess we don't. All right, cool. We have a couple questions come in ahead of time, and I already have one in the Q&A panel. So the way this works is, ask in the webinar chat. You can raise your hand in the participants panel. You can ask in the question and answer panel. All of those are a part of Zoom. I'm going to answer Jeremy's question first, which he posted in Q&A. I see Bradley has his hand up. I'll let you talk in just a moment, but let's start with the first question here and see what we can do to answer your question to the best of my ability. How does enabling date and time translation affect scheduled jobs? Cool. So just for some level setting, you can turn on time zone translation as part of a system administration feature. I believe it's under portal settings, but it's been a long time since I've done translation service stuff. Enable, I think that's not translation. I think that's text translation, but date time translation essentially means that if you are a user logging in from a certain time zone, like if I'm in the West Coast and the rest of the company's on the East Coast, I would see all of the data in decisions translated to my date and time when I log in. So I would see created on as 8 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. and so on and so forth. How does this affect scheduled jobs? That's a wonderful point. In order to enable time zone translation, your server must be in UTC, which is oh my gosh, universal time coordinate. I can't think of the acronym. Anyway, that's kind of the server standard for kind of the universal time that you set it to. So your server would be in UTC, and then you translate to Eastern or Western or the European time zone or Australian time zone, whatever it may be. It affects scheduled jobs in that whatever you set the scheduled job to be and you see it on your screen, that's when it will run for you. So if I log in and create the scheduled job as West Coast and set it for 8 a.m. Pacific, it will run on 8 a.m. from what I see. Now you log in, you'd see it run at 11 a.m. So it actually would translate the execution time to your time zone. So like I have here remove flow job. I see that this is supposed to run 6:34 a.m. If I had time zone translation and logged in as an East Coast user, they would see 9 a.m. And if someone logged in from Australia, they would see, whatever that translates to, 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., whatever it may be. So the run when should translate to the time zone you're experiencing at. But if you looked at the actual table of where it is in decisions, it will be set to UTC time. So if you go to query the table and say, hey, when are all my scheduled jobs supposed to be? You would see it saved and stored as UTC time. So universal time coordinated. Thank you, William. Oh my gosh. There we go. All right, and then we had a follow-up that says, note, once a time zone translation has been established, any jobs will run according to the server's date time value, not the translated time in the UI. Yes, so it actually runs at the UTC time, right? It will run on whatever time zone is set for the server. So like on the server, if my server would say 9 a.m. right now, and in my portal, it says 9 a.m., you got to be aware of the time zone translation. You don't fully understand what this means. Yeah, so really all it means is like it's hard to describe. Let me think of it like this. My server says 6 a.m. here. It may or may not run at 6 a.m. This is where it gets confusing, right? If I have time zone translation and I'm in the West Coast, it would run for 6 a.m. if I'm sitting in the West Coast. But when it actually runs is whatever the server time is. Gosh, that doesn't sound good either. I'm trying to explain this. I wonder if I could whiteboard this a little bit better. But yeah, in short, what you should know is when you set up a scheduled job, the run when will translate to wherever you're logged in as, but that may not be the actual time it runs on the server. So that's here. Let me say it this way. If I set this for 6 a.m., it's not running 6 a.m. UTC time. It's running 6 a.m. whatever I've logged in as. It's running 6 a.m. West Coast time or Pacific time. So you got to be aware of the user that's setting it up. What they see here, the value may not be when it runs on UTC time, and that's what you got to be careful of. So that's where that note comes in, is that this value does get translated for the user that's looking at it. So the actual stored value may not be 6 a.m. This might be a translated number, so the actual time that's stored in the database may be different. That's all it means. But if you've enabled UTC, just know that this is translated to your time zone, that whatever user set you're looking at it. I hope that makes sense. I might be able to whiteboard this a little bit better. Let's try. I know there's a couple other questions, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let me try to whiteboard this and see if this is better. So we have a server right over here. This is our decision server, and it's set for 8 a.m. UTC. Now I am user A looking at the screen. This is Eric. He's on PST. And since UTC would be like well later, this would actually be about, I think it's like 2 a.m. or something. And don't ignore my translation. So if I were to log in and look at a scheduled job, and it says my scheduled job runs at 3 a.m. It would actually run at 9 a.m. UTC time. So for me, if I'm just looking at it, yeah, that makes sense. 9 a.m. UTC time is 3 a.m. Pacific time. But if I said, oh, it runs at 3 a.m., it's not 3 a.m. UTC time, it's 9 a.m. UTC time. So this value is translated whenever I'm looking at it. I think that hopefully clears it up a little bit. But that's the note there is to be aware that even though I see it says 3 a.m., that's 9 a.m. UTC. And then if Joe logs in over here and Joe sees Eastern, that's going to be 5 a.m. and he's going to see the scheduled job at 6 a.m. Right. So we're seeing different things. I'm saying, wait, the scheduled job runs at 3. You're saying, wait, the scheduled job runs at 6. And the answer is yes, it's both because it's actually running 9 UTC, which configures for both of us. So what I configure it for is when it will run. I don't have to think in UTC. Correct. You don't have to think in UTC as long as your user culture is set correctly. That is true. Oops, sorry. Stop sharing. All right, there. I think I cleared it up a little bit. I made that way more complicated than it needed to be. Holy cow. Okay, thanks. Cool. Well, at least it sounds like I answered your question. So we're going to pretend like I did, and we'll go from there. All right, you're welcome, sir. All right, we have Bradley raise his hand next. You can come off mute. Yeah, what can I do for you, sir?
Hey, Eric. Is there a method or a way to show a user that there's a scheduled outage coming up? Some sort of banner across the top, or
is there a way to show a user a scheduled outage is coming up? Not easily.
Okay.
Now, something that's on the roadmap is let me show you what I'm talking about. If I open the debugger and turn it on, something we're talking about doing is seeing how you see this banner up here. It says global debugger running.
Yeah.
There's a feature request in to have custom clickable banners here. Like this isn't clickable, it's just informational. I would like to click this and show a little pop-up that says, scheduled maintenance is coming, etc. So today that feature unfortunately doesn't exist. And so no, there's not an easy way to do that, but we are adding that as a way to add banners and stuff up here. Now, a couple of things we do is we do have, where is it? We do have maintenance mode.
Yeah. And I played around with that. But the issue that I see with that one is not everybody has to log in. Like once you're logged in, you close your tab. You might not have to log in again.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate too. So the maintenance mode, you could create your own flow that loops through and does either top banner or pop-up notifications, which it is not the best experience, but would give you some of that behavior. So unfortunately, no, there's no good way to like custom set a banner at the top of the portal yet, but it is a feature request we have on the roadmap.
Okay. Do you think that's coming in version 9?
Yeah, it's coming in version 9 because it's going to be part of our deployment server.
Okay.
So when you go to do a deployment, you can schedule that. And when you schedule that, we want to have that custom banner at the top to let users know, like, hey, a production deployment is scheduled for noon tonight. Please save and close your window, or whatever it may be, or noon tonight, midnight tonight.
And will that be available to use for other outages? Like if we're having to reboot the server, or we're updating our server, something that's not necessarily decisions related, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
That by creating that for the deployment server, we're going to enable the flow steps for you to just do whatever you want with it.
Very good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Sorry, I wish I had a better answer for you, but other than it's coming.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, cool. I think I'm 1 for 2 then. I always keep track of how good I do on these things so I can report back. And as no longer working in the product every day, I still try to answer all these. All right. I don't see any other questions yet. So there is one that came in ahead of time I can answer here, which is a pre-submitted question. It comes in, it says, what is the best way to create a report to show the path that a customer went down in a truth table? Okay, cool. Let me talk about this really quick. And actually, I grabbed this documentation to post in the chat for whoever asked this. So I'm going to post that in the webinar chat right away. But what this is I need a folder here. Here's a test B folder. When you create a truth table, let me create a new one because I was messing around a little bit. And you have user approval. And we're going to just give this a really, really simple truth table. that says assign Boolean. Boop. And we're going to say is assign Boolean is true or false. And if it's true, we're going to assign this to Eric. And if it's false, we're going to assign this to Billy. And if for some reason the data is null, we're going to assign this to admin. Cool. All right. So now if I wanted to start tracking rule audit history for this, and I'm using this in a workflow, and this is some approval flow. What's really cool about this is I come in, I call my truth table, I pick my truth table from my list here. This is user approval. And if you see some differences in my screen, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'm on an experimental build, which is really cool. But I want to run this truth table and I'm passing in a value. We'll pretend that's dynamic and I get this result back. If you want to capture how this truth table behaves, you just turn on this capture audit history checkbox. Now you are going to get some extra values here because it's storing execution data, rule execution data into our audit tables in the database. So you can pick a folder of where this lives in decisions. That should be a picker, not just a handed in value. But for now, we're just going to use current folder. Isn't there an execute folder initiating user? I guess we'll just use current folder ID. That's fine. Where'd you go? Home folder. That's fine. Okay. You can give this an audit ID. I believe you can ignore this and it will generate one for you. But if you wanted to have a custom audit ID system, you can. And then you can give this a name for tracking purposes as well. So I can, maybe give it the flow name, or actually let's do some merge text here. I think this is more likely what a person would do. Give it like the flow name, space, and like the start time. And then this is just data for you to be able to filter and track on. When you do this, every time this truth table runs, it's additionally going to store information in the database about the execution. So if I then switch the value and run this, it switches again. Perfect. Okay. What you can then report on is you're going to get a report source here. If I go to report, we're going to call this check on my truth table. What did I call my truth table? I forgot. But you're going to look at it here for rule audit history, not phrase history. I believe that the big phrase history is the saving of it. And then so you have the name and IDs and parent folders and all the data that you had. So if we pick audit name, and then I pick what rule it was a part of, what the rule text was, and what the result data was, you could get an audit of how all the executions of your rule ran and what the results were. The reason we put these additional data fields is because then you have the option to go in and say, and write your own custom reports and filter on them, filter by rule name, your custom name, where it lives in the portal, etc. But you can see the text says, if true is true, true is true. Not really great textual representation, but I can see that the output was Eric. And you can, let's see a couple other things here. We try to result it as plain text. We give you the ID. The rule plain text is not incredibly helpful in this scenario, but for some other ones that actually has is string greater than or is I email greater than. If I'm not using Booleans, this phrase text becomes a lot more meaningful. But this is how you can start to do it. So then you can start to track how does my execution, how did my flow execute? How can I track which path this went down? And you can start to see that here's my result data for this date or this time or this user running it, etc. So yeah, that's the rule audit history table. And you can enable that for any statement rule or any truth table. So if I have a flow and I have just a regular old statement rule in here, I don't know if I have any in this install, so this might end well. User approval. I don't know what this rule does, but you can capture the same sort of audit history here as well and get that additional information. So cool. All right. What other questions we got? I'll dilly-dally and take a sip of coffee. If there are no questions, I could show off the newest, latest, and greatest features in experiment mode. All right. If no one's gonna ask questions, I'm gonna show off a little bit because I'd love some feedback. Actually, this is a little bit of opportunity to get some feedback as well. So let me preface this conversation very briefly by talking a little very quickly about roadmap. This isn't a roadmap presentation, so I won't go off on this. But version 9 is coming out next year. And there's 3 major initiatives that are going to be kind of the major focus parts of version 9. And the first one here is called projects. Projects is taking your big folder tree that can be unmanaged and have crazy dependency webs and all of this kind of folder structure we expect you to maintain and organize. And we're going to put a top level, much better organization around it called projects. So now when you log into decisions, we're going to break up all of your work into independent projects for like-minded processes or applications or whatever you want to be. And then you can go into those projects to see all of the flows and rules and ideas that make up that project. It does a number of things. One, it forces us to clean up that folder tree and hard declare dependencies across projects. So there's not this big crazy web of dependencies when you go to move things from one environment to another. It gives us better visibility and reporting on how your project looks, best practices you're following, status of deployment, those sorts of things. And it's just a much better way to organize and conceptualize your projects. Number 2 is then we're going to improve how we move those items from one environment to another. This is just deployment. So currently called the repository, we're shifting the paradigm a little bit to be, instead of just check-in, check-out practices like a code repository, to actually be a fully automated and schedulable deployment practice where you can set up deployment packages for users. You can schedule those. Your check-in process can be automated and have approval stages built into it where someone could look at your flows in a read-only mode and approve them before it gets committed to the deployment server. And then you can schedule that deployment for your maintenance window, which then could have custom banners on it and all sorts of cool things. So we're really taking a very rebuilding from the ground up approach to how we take your work from one environment to another and deploy it. So organizing things into better packages called projects, deploying them really well and consistently with good automation. And then lastly, a number of improvements for designers. This is things like the ChatGPT integration, rebuilding some of the flow iconography, having a new data visualization tool in the workflow engine, a lot of stuff there. Anyway, like I said, I'm not going in the full roadmap. I'm happy to do more if people have questions on it. But the reason I want to preface that is because we've done a lot of work, not that tab, this one, in development into projects already. So this is a working version of projects, not fully built out, but mostly built out, that we're going to start beta testing in the middle of September. So if anyone's interested in kind of getting a preview version of this in about a month, let me know and send me an email, eric@decisions.com, and I'm more than happy to chat about it. But the way this works now is you first create your grouping of work together called projects. So let's say, for example, I'm building a time off request, internal system. Maybe I just call this internal for now. That's fine. So I'm building something called time off request. I need a cool icon here. Is there like a clock? Yeah, where's a cool clock? This one looks good. Sure. Give it some description, request time off, track it all, fire people. Great. And then you can have initial folder name like time off designer stuff. Great. And with good spelling, because I'm great at spelling, you can say create. Now you enter in, and all of the work you build that's constrained inside of the projects is inside of this project folder, or really this project. It's not really a folder, it's kind of this top level organization. So you can see that I'm going to get this default dashboard with really good reporting on it. Since there's nothing in here, it doesn't matter. A bunch of tabs and a bunch of settings at the top to understand my project. Now, as I go to start to build things, like I can build my time off kickoff flow. Oh my gosh, I cannot spell today or hit the shift key apparently. Let's pretend I built a really good flow. Great. Let's go back into here and pretend I built a rule. That is check if you have PTO hours. And this integrates with some system and checks if you have enough hours to submit for your PTO. Now I can start to see that there's, tracking of all of the work inside of here. I have this score called project health, and I can even do things like we're changing the name of primary, but pick kind of your start points so that when people first log into a project, you can quickly see what kind of the first part of your project is and immediately jump in and execute it. So think of like the kickoff flow would actually be another one here. Actually, if I wanted to add more than one primary entity, I haven't tested this yet, so this is fun. I can do that here, jump back to my info page and see that I now have two, what we would call start here flows. And I could go edit these flows or run them and take a look at them from here. So we start to organize and track all of the information here. You still have the folder tree. So if I wanted to go create folders and create my own scaffolding inside of here, no problem. But we have some really cool default dashboarding. We can defaultly find all of your flows and rules very quickly from these kind of folders. They're not hard folders. These are kind of virtual folders. And the way that we do public facing work is instead of having this portal and studio concept, you're just going to put everything inside of a public folder. So all of your pages and dashboards you create for users, you'll set permissions on it here. And then for people who don't have access to the project, you can still publicly make available things like pages and dashboards. So this is the big idea around it. As you start to import and export, you'll get history of all your imports and exports. You can have a report that shows you all of the things inside of your project. If you do something like add a unit test to a project, so if I come in here, we'll call this test my rule to make sure you have PTO. Gosh, I'm failing on the good naming practices today. And we'll just say there's no way to do it. So we add that test. Now I can see all of my top level unit tests. I can run them in batch and see the results for all of them. So this one failed, and I can actually take action on it to go see why. So as a top level project view, I can go get a snapshot or run all the tests for every unit test inside of my project and following things there. If I look at things like project health, I can look at my rule and it says that I haven't provided a description or added unit tests to this rule. Actually, I did have a unit test, I thought. Oh, I checked it to my other rule. This is, sorry, I gotta fix this. That's funny. Let's look at this one. So if I go edit my rule and add a description here, and I think there's a minimum character count to prevent from what I was gonna do. So I'm gonna say, look, a rule. It checks your PTO. It integrates with some HR software. Great. I'll see my score jump up a little bit once I refresh. Beep. Yep, my score is a 75 now. So the whole point, the whole purpose of projects is to try to get a quick view or a better organization system and get better understanding of the work that goes into all the projects and things that I here. The other thing that's very cool about this is out of the box, I cannot use work from other projects. So like in test me, I have this approval flow, right? If I go back to time off request and look at my flows, I cannot use work from another project unless I enable this. Now, this might be concerning at first glance, but you'll see that that doesn't exist in my current projects, and it doesn't even exist in my recent list, even though I know for a fact that I have used this. But I can go enable project level dependencies. So you still can do the modular thinking, that there's no problem in doing this. But if I go to dependencies and I want to say, great, we're going to add a dependency to test me. Now, when I go to create my flow and I add my subfold flow here, I can go see that I could use stuff in another dependency. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to color it to the same icon as the other project as a visual indicator to say, hey, you're using something from another project. Just be aware. So some really cool updates and things here. The dependencies browser, I'll be able to see what things are depending on where and where it's being used by, etc. Really good, clear reporting on what your project's doing, the health of it, how it's working. That's projects in a nutshell. It's obviously much bigger than that 10-minute quick analysis of it. The other thing I want to show off really quick, this isn't fully built on my version, but it is fully built, is if you enable a flow as a service, you'll also be able to see in a Swagger kind of like view all of the different methods you've enabled or rules and flows and rule sets you've enabled within a project and be able to actually download them and the definitions for them here. So I can see all of the details. I can test them from here. I can copy all the URLs and descriptions. I can export that into Postman or Swagger kind of list view, and then be able to use them from here. So that's the big idea. We're still working out some of these other things, like you can set a top level error handling capability where if any flow, rule, or anything fails inside the project, we can have a project level error handling flow to handle all of it. You can set project constants that will get exported with your project. So if you have a variable that you want to set for everything inside of a project, but it's not really system-wide applicable, like our system constants, you can now do a project constant. Anytime you have custom DLL work, instead of forcing someone to log into the server and upload the DLL into a folder and hope it just works, you can apply it specifically to a project so that it gets imported and exported or moved with your deployment practices already. Anyway, lots of really, really cool stuff is here. So that's the big idea. Hopefully I didn't burn through that too fast. But if you have questions or thoughts on that, please feel free to post them in the chat now or raise your hand. Otherwise, if this was too fast, you would love to see more, look at the designs a little bit more in depth. Again, email me, Eric, eric@decisions.com. I mostly respond pretty quickly. I have a backup of emails right now, which is what makes me laugh. But I'm more than happy to hop on a call, take a look at some of these things, and look at how this might impact your business. So. All right, now I'll stop talking for a second as I keep playing with my project view. Actually, that's what I want to do. You can see all issues in your projects and what they are. You can go edit and fix them, which also impacts your health score. Anyway, it's pretty cool. All right. Looking for more questions. Going once, going twice. Oh, something about project view looks amazing. Yes, it does. Okay, that's it. I will take that comment. Project view is going to, I think, radically improve your confidence in your builds, which is one of the reasons we really focused heavily on it. We've spent the better part of a year and a half designing and tweaking and developing and arguing and playing with it. Like there's been many a meeting where I've stared across, I guess, the screen at Heath Utterman, our CTO, and called him a liar. And we've said some harsh things, but the reason I joke about that and say that is because this is something we feel drastically improves the quality of the things you build in decisions, the way you deploy them, the faster you can build and have confidence in them, the more scalable that becomes. So this is I feel this is a huge game changer, and so I'm really excited about it. All right, going once, going twice, 3 times. I know we're only at 12:30, but if you guys don't have any questions, I don't have any major things to show you unless you want to speak up and have me go into some more stuff here. But yeah, with that being said, I guess we'll kind of wrap things up a little bit early. Hope you guys enjoy your Tuesday and stick through another week. Again, tomorrow, same time, same place, you'll be with Jared, our trainer. So if you want to know really good detailed steps on how to build something or build, a feature you maybe never used before, like, oh, I've never used a data repeater, let him know. Then he can walk you through all the setup and configuration for it much better than I can. Otherwise, take care. Hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. Enjoy your weeks, and I will catch you the next time I host one of these. So take care, everyone. Have a good one.